We are on the second chapter. So the first chapter is, so basically the Srimad Bhagavatam is a book where Maharaj Parikshit is about to die in 7 days, and so he's sitting down with Sukdev Goswami for 7 days and 7 nights, and he wants to know what is the purpose of life and what is the duty of a person who's about to leave his body, and then there is a story within the story. So the sages at Naimisharanya, they ask these 6 questions, and now those questions are getting answered. So today's segment is really exciting, and I'm going to share the screen with the Bhagavatam verses. So we'll do 2 because this whole segment, which starts from text 16 through 21, and it's a segment. Hold on, I have to just give me a minute. Oh, Krishna. So this is a segment which is actually about the stages of bhakti. And so for me, this understanding that there is actually a GPS map, and one can actually look at that map and go, oh, this is where I am. And you can actually look at all the different milestones and be able to see yourself and feel really assured that we are actually on the map and we are on the way. And so the great acharyas, they have actually done this for us, where they have laid it out for us that what does the beginning of bhakti look like, and what are the different stages, and what are the symptoms in all of those different stages. So just getting there. Loka is not here with me today. He is in a meeting, so I'll be doing this. Just please bear with me. So the last verse that we did yesterday was, with sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work karma by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? So this sword actually is the sword of knowledge. Of course, sometimes when we hear this word sword, then it kind of generates a little bit of a concern that is it trying to say that we need to be violent? No, not at all. Actually, it's interesting, and we forgot to mention this point yesterday, so that's why I'm bringing it up today. The word Shastra, which is the Sanskrit word for these wisdom texts, these scriptures. So the word Shastra has its root in the word Shash. And for those that are from India, you will recognize that there is another word. Just like you have Shastra, you also have something called Shastra. So Shastra means a weapon, and Shastra means scriptures. And they both have their root in the word Shash, which means to cut. So the point or the purpose of these books, and the purpose actually of even the sadhus, is not just to pander to our ego, but actually to cut this knot. And these knots, actually, they're described as Hridaya Granthi. That is the word. Granthi means a knot. And in our heart, there are these knots, which have been like very tightly bound. Like sometimes, and in India, when you get married to when you get married, there are these rituals, and sometimes there are these fun games. And so what they do is they tie these 7 knots, with some thread, and both the husband and the wife, they're supposed to open those knots, and they're difficult, but still, for the most part, you can open them up. But sometimes, you can have a knot that no matter how hard you try, you cannot actually find where it begins, and it's practically impossible for us to unknot it, if that's even a word. So then what do? And we do this all the time, right? We get a pair of scissors and we just cut through that knot because we know we cannot open it. So in the same way, this sword, which is the Shastra, which has the ability to cut, can actually cut through this binding knot. And this binding knot actually happens the more we interact in this world, the more we get entangled, and the knot actually keeps getting harder and harder. And that is actually what causes us so much pain when somebody we love leaves us, or we get separated, or they depart, or or there's a misunderstanding, just all of those things, and we feel this sort of like as if our heart is just like really, really like feeling this great angst. It's because of this knot in the heart. And so then the rhetorical question is that, hey, if by doing this you can become free, then why won't you do it? Why? It's a question to think about. Why won't I do? If I knew that I could actually become free from all of these angst within my heart. So then the acharyas are very kind, and they ask this question and they say, it's because I don't have a taste. Because it's hard for me to sit through a session where I have to hear about Krishna. It doesn't happen naturally for me. So that's where the next verse comes into the picture. So how do we now? So then the question that would happen. So starting from text 16 through 21, it's all about the stages. What happens? How do you get taste? What are the stages? What are the steps? So text 16. Shushrushradadanasya Vasudeva Katharuchi Shan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevanat. So this is a bit of a tongue twister. Shushusho, right? So one who is engaged in hearing. Shraddadhanashya means with care and attention. So not just any kind of hearing, but we are hearing with a lot of care, with an open heart, right? So this is the translation. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. So somebody might say, well, all good and good, I understand this, that, if I hear this message, or if I just allow myself to be in the sound vibration, then I can become completely free from all fear and anxiety and stress and grief. But what if I don't have an affinity for hearing it? So then this verse is saying, hey, you can get that affinity by serving those devotees. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who's a great teacher in our line, he actually says that simply by serving the devotees, but even before you get to the stage of serving the devotees, he uses another word, which is called Satam Kripa. That is the word. So Satam Kripa means you get the mercy of a devotee. What does it mean to get a mercy of a devotee? Devotees are always merciful, right? So somehow, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in another book called Madhure Kadambini, he describes that just by coming in touch with a devotee, appreciating something, there's so many people who meet these devotees who are actually, we recite this verse. Hold on, just give me a minute. I have to remember this. It's gotten. Vancha kalpa, right. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. So the devotees are like desire trees. And so when we approach them, then they immediately, they offer you their mercy and their benevolent presence. And by that, what happens, we get a chance to serve them. So it's very, very, in fact, sometimes we may not even know that we are getting this mercy, and that's called agyata sukriti. Agyata means unknowingly, anonymous. And sukriti means that I just got something just by being in contact with someone who has the Supreme Lord within their heart. And then what happens is that if we render some service to such a soul or such a great devotee, then what happens? Immediately, we attract the attention of Krishna. So this feels, we are always talking about wanting the mercy of God. But the mercy of God is actually placed in the heart of a devotee. Krishna does not distribute this mercy on his own. Because if he did that, think about it, then he would be accused of being partial. As it is, people say God is partial, he's not fair. And now if he started distributing the opportunity for any living entity to come to him, then that would definitely be partiality. So what he does is that the devotees actually become sort of the distributors, and he just hands over that responsibility to the devotees. So then when somebody actually comes and he tries to appreciate a devotee, serve a devotee in some way, then immediately the seed of bhakti is implanted within the heart. It's like a good kind of an infection, right? You hang out with someone who has that, then automatically you get infected also. And another reason why, so there are 2-3 reasons. That is one. The second is because Krishna becomes very pleased when devotees are glorified. Just like a devotee gets very pleased when Krishna is glorified, Krishna becomes very pleased when a devotee is glorified. And we can relate to that because we see that when someone comes and appreciates our child, oh, forget about a child. You go out on a walk and you see someone with their dog and you somehow appreciate their dog. I mean, people just, they just beam and they're so happy because they love their dog. And hey, you just noticed something that they love so much, and you notice their good qualities. So the same way, the devotees are like the dogs of Krishna. And so when a devotee is appreciated, then Krishna becomes very happy. And when Krishna becomes happy, then the seed of bhakti just begins to get implanted within the heart. The third reason why a devotee, being when you're in the association of devotees, I don't know about you, but for me, I guess I was very fortunate when I came across, for example, my spiritual master, my Guru Maharaj. When I first saw him, I had never seen someone so beautiful. I had never seen, him. I had never met a person who was so kind and so gentle. And so I remember both Loka and I, we kept looking at him like, oh, he's so amazing. And then just from that, then you start to wonder, what is it? What is it about this person? What is he tasting? Of course, sometimes we may not be able to make that connection in such a conscious manner, but at a subconscious level, we want to know, want to hang out more with him. And so as a result of that, we start wanting to associate more with that person. And then we start hearing from him. And then what happens when we start hearing about Krishna? It's like the more you know about Krishna, the more you fall in love with him. And so that's how one also starts to develop this taste. So that's what, so this word Shraddha happens, this faith. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that, there are these stages of bhakti. It starts with Adau Shraddha. Adau Shraddha means a very tiny little bit of faith. It's not even faith at that point. It's simply a curiosity. It's an appreciation, maybe. It's maybe a maybe. Maybe there is something to it. Let me look at it. So that's Adau Shraddha. It's not Shraddha, it's Adau. Means it's very tiny little bit of an opening. So now from that Adau Shraddha, what's the next stage? The next stage is Sadhu Sangha. Now I develop an inclination to hang out with those that are walking down the same path as I would perhaps, that seems attractive to me. And so I start spending time. And Prabhupada says, what's the best way to become an alcoholic? And I know we've told this so many times, is to hang out with those that are, I was actually thinking about it, that anything that we have a taste for, how did we get that taste? Whether it's the taste for watching a particular kind of movie, or it's a taste for a particular kind of music, or it's a taste for a particular kind of food, it's probably connected to some person that we hung out with, right? Like somebody introduced us and say, hey, why don't you try this? Or there are memories associated with some kind of activities. And so we just love doing those activities. I mean, there are certain activities that I did with my family members. To this day, I enjoy that so much. So we can see the taste is always connected. So when we hang out with such people, sadhu sangha, then they have a certain taste. What is their taste? Their taste is in bhajan. So then the third stage that comes about is called bhajana kriya. So bhajana kriya means that one actually picks up the practices. So you hang out with them and they say, hey, join us for kirtan. And then the person starts to join for kirtan. And then you start like, oh, this is fun. This is great. So that's called bhajana kriya. Now, the fourth stage that comes about as a result of doing this bhajan is actually very, very exciting. It is the most exciting and the longest stage of bhakti. And guess what that is? That is called anartha nivritti. What is anartha? Anarthas are all those things that we hold so dear for, within our heart. We keep it very tightly locked up. One time Prabhupada was making this point that he saw somebody in Kolkata, and he was this very, very poor man, and he had no possessions, nothing of value. But he had, what he had? He had these burnt pieces of log, which were of no value to anyone. And he held them very tight to himself because to him, those were precious. So we are also holding on to these broken pieces of, or burnt pieces of log or broken pieces of glass. And those broken pieces of glass, we keep them so tightly bound to us. And guess what they do? Have you ever tried to hold on very tight to a broken piece of glass? What happens? You bleed. You hurt, right? When you hold a broken piece of glass, you're the one who's going to bleed. But this is exactly what we do. So what Krishna does in this process of anartha nivritti, he comes and he takes it away. He removes everything that is inauspicious. And what are these inauspicious things? All of these things that we hold, that we in our mind, we think they are very precious, or that they, without that, we cannot really live. And so this process of anartha nivritti means giving up all the unwanted things that are actually causing us grief. And so that's called anartha nivritti. So now let's read the next verse, because the next verse is actually connected to this. So that's why just by serving the devotees, I'm just going to go back to this verse and see if there's anything else. So Vasudeva Katharuchi. So when you do this, when you allow yourself to serve a devotee and take shelter, Punya Tirtha Nishevanat means that you take shelter of a devotee. A devotee is also called a Tirtha, by the way. Why is a devotee called a Tirtha? A Tirtha, by the way, is a place of pilgrimage. Or if you look at the dictionary meaning of a Tirtha, it means a place like a bridge. A Tirtha also means a bridge. So a place from which you can cross over. But devotees are actually called moving tirthas. Like right now in the corona pandemic time, you cannot travel to the holy places. Impossible, right? Now it's opening up. But devotees are moving tirthas, or moving places of pilgrimage, or moving bridges. So just by coming in association with them, one can actually cross over. And when that happens, what is the result? The result is that one develops Vasudeva Katharuchi. One suddenly starts to develop taste. And Prabhupada gives an example that if you have jaundice, then even if you taste something, if you're given sugar candy, you won't find it sweet. You'll actually find it bitter. So in the same way, even though there is a lot of taste in hearing about Krishna, in the beginning stages, we find it boring. Why? Because we would rather go watch something on Netflix or wherever, right? So that's, but then the cure for jaundice, according to Ayurveda, is actually sugar candy. And so you keep taking that sugar candy, and in due course of time, when your jaundice goes down, then the sugar candy will actually start to taste sweet. So this is how one actually becomes purified, and one revives one's original attraction. Krishna is the great magnet, and we are these tiny iron fillings. Our natural dharma is to be attracted to this great magnet. Why are we not attracted? Why? Because we are rusty, or we have covered ourselves with many, many layers of cloth. So our whole process is not to, there is really nothing to be done other than uncover ourselves. And then as soon as that happens, we'll automatically start feeling attracted to Krishna. So the next verse is connected. So I think I'll just discuss it, and then we'll pause here for discussion. So the next verse is text 17. Shrinvatam swakatha Krishna punya shravana kirtana hriday antasto hi abhadrani vidhunuti suhrit satam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who's the Paramatma in everyone's heart and benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So this is actually the whole process of anartha nivritti. So what's happening is when we come in touch with the devotee, we start serving the devotee, we start engaging in this process of bhajan, or chanting and reading and hearing, then what happens? The Krishna suddenly starts to take notice. Hey, this person is calling out to me, or is trying to take an interest in me. But he's already seated in the heart, and he's not very happy, because our heart is actually quite a messy place, right? Just too much stuff in there. It's cluttered. And so he starts to actually act like a sweeper, and he takes up the broom, and he says, all right, let's start cleaning up this place, and let's make it a beautiful place. Actually, what he does is he first cleans the place, and then there's an altar. Prabhupada says, in our heart, there is this beautiful altar. And before we can actually have Krishna reside on that altar, we want to clean up that place, right? And so he starts to do that, and he's actually seated as our best friend. And he's always aware of us, but as we start to take interest in him, he takes on this personal responsibility of trying to help us clear out these anarthas. And I'm just going to see if there's anything here by Prabhupada. I love this. I really, really love these few lines. I'm going to read this. The Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. When he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and has thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. So, this is actually quite interesting, that even though we might be getting quite tired here, but at the same time, our desire to go back is actually not so strong. Krishna's desire to take us back is actually stronger. And so he's always very active. Prabhupada says Krishna is never lazy in trying to reclaim all the living entities and bring them back, because he knows the nature of this world. And he knows that this material world is actually a very, very crazy place. It's a very difficult place. And he certifies that in the Bhagavad Gita. And he says it's dukhalayam ashashvatam. He says this world is actually full of difficulties and it is temporary. So so as a result, he's always working very hard to bring us back. Now, there's one last point that I just want to quickly make, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, but I'll just mention it, that in this section, this Anartha Nivritti stage, which is this verse, this text 17 is all about Anartha Nivritti. There are 6 symptoms. How do you recognize that you are in the Anartha Nivritti stage? So the 6 symptoms or the 6 anarthas are utsamai. So the first thing that we will encounter with a person who's at that stage is that he or she will be full of himself. And they'll say, I am the best. I know everything and I have studied everything and I can do so much. And I am God's gift to mankind because I'm such a great, pure soul. So that's utsamai. The second thing is ghana taral. Ghana taral means that today I get all enthusiastic and I go like, yeah, I want to finish all these books and I want to be this pure devotee and I'm going to do this. And then the next day it's like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't quite like it, right? So that's ghana taral, unsteady. Vyudha vikalpa, which means that my mind is constantly taking me like in too many different directions. Should I do this or should I do that? Actually, I'm going to quit all my work and just go join an ashram. No, actually, that's not a good idea. Maybe I should just go get married. So like that, my mind is going in 10 million places. And then Vishaya Sangara, which means that my mind, even though I understand that what is really good for me, but my senses are still attracted to sense objects, right? So I cannot help myself. I'm just naturally addicted to all kinds of sense enjoyment. And then niyamakshama means that I'm not able to improve my practices with all my best vows. I say from today onwards, I'm going to do this, but then I fall through the cracks. And then the last one of it is taranga rangini, which means, and this we see and causes a lot of disturbance in society. You see people who start to enjoy the benefits that bhakti grants them, the material benefits. So they'll have a big following, or they'll become very charismatic or very powerful, or they'll start getting a lot of money, a lot of status, and they start enjoying that. So these are all obstacles as we move along the path of Anartha Nivritti. So we have covered so far, and I'm just going to quickly recap. First is Shraddha, which means just this tiny little bit of faith. Second stage is that you start hanging out with devotees and you start appreciating them. And as a result, you start getting some spiritual credit. As a result of that spiritual credit, what happens is you start engaging in the activities of bhajan. And when you start engaging in activities of bhajan, then Krishna, who's seated in the heart as a super soul, he takes a broom and he starts sweeping your heart. And then all these different unwanted things within the heart, they start to get purified. And then from here, if you remember, Jeanette, you asked a question about Bhavati Bhakti Neshtaki. So we'll get into that verse. From that, we will actually become fixed up. Nishta Bhakti. We'll get to that platform. So I'll pause here and see if you guys have any reflections or questions. This is a dense technical section of Srimad Bhagavatam, but just really, really beautiful.
Vinita, Mataji, can you please talk a little bit more about Agyat Sukriti? You mentioned Agyat Sukriti.
Yes. Agyata Sukriti, actually Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that many times, people, they don't know, they just go out, especially in the West, it's very, very common. People go out and they suddenly get some prasadam and they don't know what it is. And they accept it. And that's that's the beginning of their spiritual life. Or, for example, they go out, and we actually met a few people like that who've gone out and they were on a metro station and they suddenly hear the holy name. They hear Krishna's name being chanted. They don't know what that is, but they're like, oh, this is beautiful, right? So that's one way. The other way is like, there's a guy who works in my workplace. I don't know what it is about him, but he's the coolest guy. Like, he's just so calm and so kind, and so he has such wonderful qualities. I don't even know what that person is all about, but that person happens to be a devotee. Another example of Agyat Sukriti would be actually in Prabhupada's life. And Prabhupada was traveling on a flight, and he always would carry some prasadam with him. So he had some puffed rice, and there was a stewardess on the plane, and she didn't know anything. She just saw him and somehow was really attracted by him, by his energy. And so as she was walking by, when Prabhupada was eating, she just put her hand into his, like bag of puffed rice and just took it and just ate it. And that was the end of it. And then later, many years later, and then after that, she was so, something in her heart just kept feeling very attracted. So she looked him up on the passenger list and found out that he had written many books, ordered those books. And years later, some devotees actually met this lady and she had become a devotee. So in our books, it is described, sadhu sanga, sarva shastra koi, lava matra sadhu sanga, sarva siddhi hoy. That, just by this lava matra, just like a moment of association with the sadhu, we can actually get all kinds of benefit. So this agyata sukriti is unknowingly, we serve a devotee. Suppose there's a devotee who's walking in a grocery store and you say, hey, can I help you with this? So right there, you've accumulated some sukriti there, some pious, it is not a pious credit, it's not a good karma, it is a spiritual credit. And that, as you add up those spiritual credits, just like you, I mean, Manjari, you went to Mayapur when as a kid, that's sukriti. You were not aware at that point, but you just loved it. And you just walked around there and so the holy dham can also afford us that same sukriti.
That means basically unknowingly, when you feel drawn or you feel, without knowledge, but you feel the pull that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, some people are just naturally, very open-hearted. And so they somehow, it's like I said, there is no cause to it. It's just good fortune.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, please do.
So about the Hridaya Granthis, so by naturally being devoted to Krishna, the Granthis start to open up, or is there a particular kriya process that you have to do for this opening of the Hridaya Granthis?
Such a good question. Such a great question. Yes. So when you start the process of bhajan, the sound, because what is it saying? With sword in hand. So what is that sword? That sword is the transcendental sound vibration. And that sound vibration comes in many different forms, like our process of chanting every day. That is actually powerful sound that will penetrate through all the different layers. Prabhupada actually says that in his write-up on chanting Hare Krishna. He says this sound vibration can penetrate through the physical, mental, intellectual strata of our consciousness and go directly into our heart. And it can start to untie that knot. This hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is another very, very powerful method in which this Hridaya Granthi, or the knot of the heart, can get completely cut away. And so one will actually start to experience that. And as that happens, one will start experiencing great relief. And that will be a symptom. Actually, the Nectar of Devotion describes that there are two symptoms that happens when you first take up the process of bhakti, right in the very beginning stages. And those two symptoms are, one is called kleshagni and the other is shubhada. So kleshagni means that all these kleshas, these disturbances of the heart, the burning of the heart, immediately everything starts to, it's all over. And the other is shubhada, which means that auspiciousness starts to happen or appear in our life. It's interesting that in our Guru, you've attended Mangalarti, Manjari. So we sing this beautiful, Samsara Dhava Nalalita Loka Karunya Ghana Ghanatvam. So that verse says that, this whole material existence is like a forest fire and the devotees are like mercy clouds. So you can't really extinguish the forest fire by bringing little buckets of water or putting in like these little fire extinguishers in our house. It's a huge fire. So the only way that fire can be extinguished is when there's a heavy rainfall. And so the devotees are compared to like rain clouds which shower this, and that way this burning of the heart is completely extinguished.
Beautiful, beautiful explanation. And the last question I have is that you were talking about the 6 symptoms of the Anartha Nivritti. Yeah. So I was understanding that Anartha Nivritti is a good thing, but these symptoms are not very positive, the symptoms that you've explained. Yes. So when you talk about the 4th stage of devotion, I thought it's a good, like it's a final or a good stage. It is. But it seems like it's not.
No. So good. I'm glad you brought that up. No, this stage is actually the most important stage. It's the most difficult stage. And, in a sense, like you said, it's the most auspicious stage because one is able to give up all of these unnecessary things within the heart. These are the obstacles on that path that as you're walking down this path, then, what happens is by the time you're at this stage, you have enough knowledge, you have enough, understanding and practices. So there is a sense in which we may start to feel like, hey, I am on top of the world. I got it. So one has to just be mindful of these pitfalls. But no, the six anarthas that are actually eliminated in the process of bhakti are actually kama, krodha, right? Lust, anger, greed, envy, madness, and what is it? The last one,
Kama, Krodha, Mada, Lobha, Moha. So that's
right?
5.
Matsarya, madness, right? Matsarya, madness. So those are the ones that get eliminated. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was helpful.
Anybody else have any other comments or questions?
You talked about how a lot of times we're avoiding our attraction to Krishna because we'd rather watch Netflix.
Yeah.
And I definitely have days like that.
Sure.
But I think the more I delve into everything for Krishna, the less and less attractive that Netflix becomes. Although, there's definitely days that you're just like, I just don't wanna. But
yeah. One of the qualities, another quality that Rupa Goswami talks about is utsaha nishchaya dhairyat. So, we have to really understand what we are trying to overcome here. Countless lifetimes, we have been addicted to this material sound, and Netflix is just one example of that. So, we have to always see how far. One of our, very dear teacher and mentor, he always says that the distance that you have come is much greater than the distance that you have to go. Or rather, the distance that you have to go is much shorter than the distance you have come. So we've already come a long distance. And so now we just have to be also patient, knowing the fact that this addiction or this interaction with this material sound is from time immemorial. So we will still continue. All we are trying to do is replace it. And in due course of time, our natural attraction for spiritual sound vibration will become stronger and stronger. So, but thank you, Reggie, for sharing that. I think it's the story of our lives. We should not get discouraged. Anybody else? Rebecca, Jeanette, Radhika.
What was the word that you used in the beginning? Satam what? Satam?
Satam Kripa.
Satam what?
Satam Kripa. Kripa.
And what was the meaning, Didi?
Mercy of the devotees. Satam means devotees and Kripa means mercy. So mercy of the devotees.
Okay. And
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's not that important. You can go ahead. I can talk.
So when you say mercy of the devotee, that means mercy for another devotee. What are we exactly saying? Mercy.
What are we saying? Mercy of the devotee simply means the association of a devotee. The association itself is the mercy, which means that the opportunity to be able to just meet a devotee. Because devotees are mercy containers. So the very fact, and that's why a devotees, like for example, the yogis, they just like to take off, retire in the Himalayas, go away. They want to be in seclusion. But a devotee makes himself or herself available to people in general, and in fact, in the traditional system, they would actually go door to door, knocking on doors, just so that they could offer their association and their mercy. So, mercy of the devotee simply means their presence, and so just by coming in contact with that, one actually becomes addicted.
So, mercy of a devotee towards the other people who are not yet.
Yes.
The other, that's what I was trying to.
Yes. Yes. Anybody. And we see that, like Prabhupada getting on a Jaladuta, coming to the West, going to the most craziest place in America at that time, the Bowery, where all the hippies and the drug addicts were, living with them, cooking for them, struggling just to find a place to stay, being attacked by a drug addict. All that is just, mercy. And because of that, actually, my spiritual teacher, he met Prabhupada at that time. So that is mercy. He made himself available. He didn't have to leave Vrindavan. He didn't have to get on a cargo ship at the age of 69, suffer 2 heart attacks on the way, land in New York with no money, no contacts. struggle through, cold winters in New York with nobody to help him out. That's mercy. Anybody, any last thoughts? If you guys want to leave, please go ahead. I've been told that sometimes people have a need to discuss a little bit. So I'm making myself, I'm sitting, I'll just wait here. But if those of you who need to leave are welcome to leave as well.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. If this talking about this mercy that you're saying, like I was thinking like how the sages have come together, discussed up, and then they have put everything in writing. And also, as you said, like, when you were reading the verses, you said like they ask the question and themselves and they give the answers also, because we don't even know how to ask questions. So
Yes.
that is causeless mercy, which is like beyond my mind's comprehension, what it actually means. And then yeah, I wish I could get that, that kind of feeling in the heart towards other living entities, to pass on that mercy that we have received.
You're already doing that, Bhaktilata. But yes, that's a beautiful meditation. That how do we become an instrument, like a copper wire that is simply transmitting this compassion. So that is a good meditation. Nice. Anybody else? Radhika, I'm sorry, you had something you wanted to say. Go ahead. Love to
It
hear.
wasn't that important, Didi, but yeah, I just wanted to, I really love the analogy of the magnet, which you give. So, and I compare it with my life that when I was attracted to devotees, say suppose I have a magnet and I cover it with a cloth, and then still it is attracted to the iron. Like, I'm sorry, there's a magnet covered with a cloth and still it's attracted to the iron, right? Like when you cover it, sometimes still it pulls. But I was thinking that in order for us to go to Krishna, we'll have to leave that cloth behind. And that is the Anartha Nivritti stage. So, because sometimes you might feel that my attraction is enough and I'm attracted to Krishna. But from Krishna's perspective, that's not sufficient.
Yeah.
So that fabric which is covering the magnet has to be given up, and only then we are ready enough. So yeah, just wanted to be.
So beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, we don't even know what love means, right? We're actually getting cheated in the name of love in this material world. We really are. We have no, like when we read Krishna's pastimes, like really, is a human being really, or a living entity capable of feeling those kind of emotions? Where they, you smell Krishna's fragrance and they just faint. They hear Krishna's flute and they just faint. Like when was the last time that happened to us? When we saw someone and just, there might be some initial attraction like that. It doesn't last for anyone. So, it's, I always laugh because, here in America, we get mangoes. And whenever I eat a mango in America, I think, yeah, it's a semblance of a mango. The real mangoes are in India, right? This is the mango season. And now it's getting better actually. When I first came here and I would eat a mango, I'd go, no, this is not a mango. It looks like a mango. It's called a mango, but it's not a mango.
And what about lychees? Also.
This year I've been lucky. I got some good lychees. But yeah, lychees and mango.
Yeah, I think if anybody is interested, Costco is selling very nice lychees. We got so much of them, right?
I'm going today. Today is my day to go to Costco then. I love these. Manjari is laughing because she's probably feasting on mangoes and lychees every day.
No, but I have one last question. I know you already said the last one is over, but since I'm very new to this, if you can give a little bit of an overall picture as to where we are. I mean, I've understood the last few mantras. You've talked about the codes, but a little bit more about the text, from where they come and all of that. A little bit of a brief.
She's new, but she's also the oldest. So for those of you who may not know, she and I, we were together in our school in Jaipur together, and we go way back.
30 years or more, I don't know.
Yes. And we met again in Mayapur, and it's like no time has gone by between us, so it's really amazing. So yeah, this is a book actually. Let me show you. This is the Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, Manjari, if I would highly recommend you should actually you should get a full set. This is an encyclopedic book. It looks beautiful, and this Bhagavatam is actually 18,000 verses. And it leaves, like, so Bhagavad Gita is considered to be the undergraduate level, and then Bhagavatam is like the graduate level study. And then there's another level, Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, but Bhagavatam is actually considered to be the cream of all the Vedic literature. So what happens is there are 4 Vedas, 18 Puranas, 108 Upanishads, and then there is the Vedanta Sutra, right? The Brahma Sutras, which Ved Vyas, he wanted to put everything, the summary and the essence of all the Vedas in one book. So he wrote the Vedanta Sutra. The problem with Vedanta Sutra was that it's very cryptic and it's aphorisms like sutras, right? So very difficult to understand. And so then after that, Vedvyas realized that he needed to actually write a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is actually a commentary by the author himself on the Vedanta Sutra. So the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam is actually directly. So in the Vedanta Sutra, for example, one of the aphorism is Atato Brahma Jigyasa and Janmadaya Sayataha, that we know that defines what the absolute truth is. Atato Brahma Jigyasa means let's inquire about the nature of the absolute truth. So the Srimad Bhagavatam picks up from where Vedanta Sutra sort of just, so like you have these codes, and then the codes have been kind of explained and fluffed up and described in much greater detail in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so there are 12 volumes in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it will systematically go through these questions that these sages at Naimisharanya, they are inquiring from Suta Goswami. And so that's one part. And then the other part is Maharaj Parikshit, he gets cursed to die in 7 days. And so he wants to know what is the duty of a person who's about to die. So he sits down on the banks of the Ganga, and then Sukdev Goswami, who is the son of Vyasadev, he arrives. And then Sukdev Goswami speaks to him about the Srimad Bhagavatam, which he had heard from his own father. So what I will do to you, Manjari, is that Amritvani, you have all the previous recordings, right? Because we talked about Srimad Bhagavatam and so many different things.
Yes, Mataji.
Send those recordings over to Manjari.
She's in WhatsApp group, Mataji.
But you're not part of our WhatsApp yet, right? So we'll
No.
I'll do that. I'll take care of that. So Amritvani will work together and we'll send you. So that way you can also watch this. But yeah, this is the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's actually the magnum opus or the summum bonum of all the Vedic knowledge. And the Bhagavatam itself talks about how it's the cream of all Vedic literatures. So like, for example.
So we are in which volume right now?
First volume. We are in the first volume, second chapter.
All right, first one.
So those sessions that you missed, we'll just send you the recording of that.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Thank
so
you.
Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. For your
Thank you. Hare
support.
Krishna.
Thank you, everyone.